civilization could not continue for long. The starting point of his proposal for the construction of a social order is the man who, through a revolutionary transformation of self, initiates a process of social reordering and helps create institutions that give rise and sustain a true civilization. The key question that occupied Gandhi during much of his life work centered around the ontological status of man and his relationship with his fellow men and the social and natural environment that sustained him. In considering these questions, he develops the concept of a true civilization that offers radically from the one underlying modern civilization. His vision of a true civilization, however, cannot be fully appreciated without looking deeply into the tensions, the dilemmas, and the paradoxes, in short, the abnormalities that characterize modern civilization. Most of the critique of modern civilization focus only on some aspects of it, but Gandhi's critique of modern civilization, on the other hand, is total. Gandhi's critique of modern civilization rests primarily on three very significant positions. One, Gandhi believed that the driving force of modern civilization is what he calls the hunger for wealth and greedy pursuit of worldly pleasure. The desire for immense wealth in situations where resources are limited inevitably leads to violence both at the individual and at the collective levels. Amassing of wealth by one individual means preventing others from having access to the resources one wants for oneself. This may not always lead to physical violence, but it does have more severe consequences than physical hurt. It creates a social order in which inequality, oppression, and deprivation prevail with disastrous implications for human dignity. At the collective level, this is reflected in one nation exploiting other nation that not infrequently leads to even wars. And finally, presenting material acquisition as a desirable goal for each individual creates a situation where individuals are motivated to strive at the cost of majority to seamlessly acquire an ever rising level of physical comfort and luxury. Obviously, in this race, only a few succeed, and even then, even that too at a great cost. The very expectation that one can make good makes one blind to the hopelessness, the cruelty, the oppression, the exploitation, the indignity, etc., inherent in modern civilization. Though Gandhi's proposal for the reconstruction of society have their roots in the dialectical relationship between his thought and action, the ideas themselves spring from a living, dynamic, and vibrant core. We get a glimpse of this core in Hind Swaraj, a small book which he wrote in 1909. Hind Swaraj constitutes a powerful critique of modern civilization and shows how modern civilization distorts man's existence and propels him to limitless greed, acquisition, and violence. Gandhi does not remain content with just denouncing modern civilization, he also provides us solutions scattered throughout his voluminous, I think about 100 volumes of his writings, are clues on the basis of which it is possible to reconstruct his vision of self and society. Any conception of a desirable social order must begin with the conception of self. Modern civilization ignores the claims of the inner being and emphasizes the externalization of life as the true object of man's existence, which totally ignores the possibility that the moral and spiritual propensity for self-development is inherent to human nature. It denies the claim that the uniqueness of being human is essentially ethico-religious, and this uniqueness cannot be understood if human beings are reduced to their biological, psychological, or sociological aspects. The question of the proper conception of the self, therefore, is also the question of self's relationship with society. The two most widely prevalent views of the individual as the basis of the sociability needs to be considered here. Individuals considered self-defining and self-sufficient entities constitute the primary elements whose coming together form the aggregate called society. Committed as Gandhi was to every individual, becoming a full-blooded, fully developed member of society, his disillusionment with modern civilization was complete when it failed miserably to create conditions propitious for the flowering of individuality. The multiplication of wants and machinery contrived to supply them reduced man to a mere cog in the machine. He has no influence on decisions which greatly impinge upon his life. Everywhere in the world, in any state system, we just watching that man is nothing, just cog in the machine. He has no say in deciding, in implementing his future plans. Well, besides the loss of freedom, he is in the struggle to make both ends meet, also lose his soul. Gandhi would therefore frequently use the language of the Bible. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world but lose his soul? Mark 8:36. Thus, for Gandhi, modern civilization stands for the emasculation of men, promoting exploitation and dominance and unleashing violence and killing morality. If modern civilization, in the words of Gandhiji, if modern civilization stands for all this, and I have understood it to do so, I call it shaitanic, and with it the present system of government as its best exponent. Gandhiji recognizes the fruit in man, but he also believes that man can attain perfection if he so desires. To Gandhi, modern civilization does just that. It presents to man all the allurement of material comforts and tempts him to remain at the level of the brute. If man wishes to avoid the disaster being caused by modern civilization, he must rise above the level of the brute. It is man's destiny to become more than the brute, as he is the maker of his destiny. In the words of Gandhiji, he is a special creation of God, precisely to the extent that he is distinct from the rest of his creation. Perfection in a lifetime, therefore, means a continuous, ceaseless striving towards knowing one's true nature. In eating, sleeping, and in the performance of other physical functions, man is not different from the brute, but distinguishes him from the brute is his ceaseless striving to rise above the brute on the moral plane. Thus, for Gandhi, Swaraj or freedom means rule over oneself. Swaraj does not and cannot, in Gandhi's opinion, come from any external circumstances or through paying lip service to it. It is inward change. It is the transformation of the heart. Thus, the transcendental center for Gandhi is none other than God. Writing in 1925, Gandhiji defined God thus: God is that. We just know that Gandhi said truth is God. But what kind of truth is that? For example, His Excellency just reminded me that on Monday there is a holiday in US remembering Martin Luther King. I will go to that extent what Martin Luther King was able to understand by this definition of Gandhi. Truth, God. Gandhi says God is that indefinable something which we all feel but which we do not know. To me, God is truth and love. God is ethics and morality. God is fearlessness. God is the source of light and life, and yet He is above and beyond all this. God is conscious. He is even atheism of the atheist. He is personal God to those who need His personal presence. He is embodied to those who need His touch. He is the purest essence. He simply is there to those who have faith. He is all things to all men. He is in us and yet above and beyond us. One may banish the word God, but one has no power to banish the thing itself. Well, when Gandhi says that truth is God, Martin Luther King explained that word, that truth is just. Just, it means Each and every creation of the God has the right to get the equal opportunity in social, political, economic, in each and every field. So, on the basis of this explanation of Martin Luther King, his dream of Martin Luther King became the dream of each and every person who is deprived or downtrodden. The quest for truth must consist in serving humanity. This is the second phase of Gandhi's truth, that God is in our downtrodden people who are suffering. He says the quest for truth must consist in serving humanity and elevating its suffering. Service to others is only possible when man rises above self-interest and engages in action without hanking for results. This means overcoming attachments and training one's mind so that it does not run after sense objects and joy and pleasure that flow from the gratification of one's desire. Detached, selfless action is only possible when one surrenders oneself completely to God and dedicates one's activities to Him. The ideal man is someone who dedicates his life for the preservation and promotion of the public good. As Gandhi says, first of all, we shall have to consider how we can realize the self and serve our country. For realizing the self, the first essential thing is to cultivate a strong moral sense. Morality means the acquisition of virtues such as fearlessness, truth, celibacy, and so on. Service is automatically rendered to the country in this process of cultivating morality. Gandhi thus equates morality with virtue and makes self-realization dependent upon the acquisition of virtue. But the acquisition of virtue is not a goal for Gandhi. It is only a beginning for the great spiritual adventure of self-realization through selfless service. Moreover, these virtues are instrumental in disciplining the body and the mind, without which self-realization is not possible. Gandhi prescribes the 11 vows. Well, there is a small book from Yeravada Mandir in English. In Gujarati and Hindi, we have that Mangal Prabhat. In that 40 pages book, Gandhi provides the 11 vows, 11 resolutions for any individual. By following these 11 vows, he can become the ideal man for the society. The vows for truth, non-violence or universal love, celibacy, control of palate, non-stealing, non-possession of power or poverty, self-sufficiency, Swadeshi, fearlessness, removal of untouchability, bread labor, and the tolerance of equality of all religions. Well, we just find that each and every person is fighting inside in the absence of such principles. You may say principles, vows, vratas, or rules, or some resolutions. But each and every individual or citizen of this world order, of new order, should have some principles inherent. Two questions assume importance in this connection. First, what are the important elements in Gandhian thinking that have a bearing on the relationship between the individual and the society? Second, what is the nature of socio-political institutional framework that is most conducive to sustaining and promoting the relationship between the self and society? Gandhi conceives of the relationship between the individual and society as analogous to that between the drops and the ocean. The drops, even while they can claim individuality, cannot survive without the ocean, society. And conversely, the ocean will lose its identity without the drops. The question of the relationship between the individual and society cannot, in Gandhi's view, be discussed in terms that give primacy to either. For Gandhi, individual is very important, core, but society also gets the same importance. It is in view of these considerations that Gandhi put so much emphasis on Swadeshi, commitment to one's own country, locality. As he says, now this new concept is coming for society, that concept of Swadeshi. Gandhi says, Swadeshi is that spirit in us which motivates us to serve and use our immediate surrounding to the exclusion of the more remote. So if we take up religion to explain the point, I must restrict myself to my ancestral religion. That is the use of my immediate religious surroundings. If I find it defective, I should serve it by purging it for its defects. In the domain of politics, I should make use of the indigenous institutions and serve them by querying them of their proved defects. In that of economics, I should use only things that are produced by my immediate neighbors and serve these industries by making them efficient and complete where they might be found wanting. See, this is the problem for Gandhi. We have nowadays in the economics also labor and capital. For Gandhi, capital is not so important. Important is the labor, because through the philosophy of Swadeshi, we can reduce the pressure of capital if we give the dignity to the labor. Gandhi recognizes the interdependence of the self and society. However, the individual for Gandhi remains important, not because the individual is prior to society, because he is the most active component of society, and corporate growth is dependent entirely on individual growth. As Gandhi says, and the one discovery I have made is that, really speaking, there is no distinction whatsoever between individual growth and corporate growth. This is the problem. We all are fighting, running, creating a lot of things for own development. We are not thinking about the social development, corporate development of our surroundings, of our own people. A social order based on ahimsa, universal love, must reflect interdependency, harmony, and substantial but not mechanical equality. It should also be informed by the principle of Swadeshi, which simply means that the most effective organization of social, economic, and political functions must follow the natural contours of the neighborhood. This essentially means the primacy of the immediate community. For Gandhi, the village in India is the primary unit of social, economic, and political organization. Well, I am not explaining this because this is not concerned with the devotees' conditions. Gandhi believes in the essential unity of life. Gandhi rejects segmentation of human activities and refuses to give priority to a particular segment at the expense of others. He says the whole gamut of man's activities today constitute an indivisible whole. You cannot divide social, economic, political, and pure religious work into watertight compartments. I do not know any religion apart from human activity. It provides a moral basis to all other activities which they would otherwise lack, reducing life to a maze of sound and fury signifying nothing. See, this is the Gandhi's view that you can't say that this is the economic issue. No, this is the political issue. This is the social issue. No, each and every aspect of human life is interconnected, interdependent. Therefore, we must take the human life in the holistic way. It is in this connection that we can appreciate why Gandhi equates economics with ethics. He formally rejects the idea that economic activities have their own laws and need not be influenced by moral and spiritual values. The present economic system, based as it is on the equality, exploitation, and domination, must be replaced by human economics. If man is to remain, if a man is to attain peace, happiness, and spirituality, Gandhi identifies three values. Gandhi identifies these values as ahimsa, universal love, harmony, equality, and swadeshi, locality. An economic order based on these values must emphasize the minimization of wants, self-sufficiency, decentralization, and localization of production and distribution, and trusteeship. Well, trusteeship is very great idea of Gandhi, that in society we can't kill the mill owners, we can't destroy the existing economic system, but we can compel the owner of that industry that you are not owner. This industry belongs to the society and you are just trustee, and take care of this industry in the way of a trusteeship. It is apparent that what Gandhi visualized is a network of local communities which are self-sufficient insofar as their relationship with the outer world is concerned, but interdependent in their internal interactions. These communities will be communities in the real sense of the term, in which the relationship between the individual and society is based on well-being of both. It is such a community that really provides support and sustenance for the quest for the self-development. The inseparability of religion and politics, this is the very important concept of Gandhi, that politics should be religious one. It also means that politics must become a means for articulating and reflecting in socio-political life and organization and the basic value commitment that Gandhi considers essential for human existence. It is in this perspective that Gandhi's insistence on the inseparability of religion and politics can be appreciated, as he says, "I have been experimenting with myself and friends by introducing religion into politics, and now I believe they cannot be divorced. Let me explain what I mean by religion. It is not Hinduism, which I prize most highly, but the religion which transcends Hinduism. The basic truth which underlies all the religions of the world. It is the struggle for truth, for self-expression. I call it the truth force, the permanent element in human nature, constantly struggling to find itself, to know its master." This kind of truth force should be in the political areas. The unequal relationship between the people and their government has to be terminated, and the true relationship between them must be established. That is to say, the government must act as the servant of the people instead of functioning as their master. Gandhi would therefore like the government to obey the wishes of the people rather than determine these wishes and then act on them. Gandhi says, "I should expect rules to rule according to my wish, but in order to ensure that government acts as the servant of the people, it is necessary for the people to themselves remain alert and active." Self-government means, Gandhi says, continuous effort to be independent of government control, whether it is foreign government or it is national. Swaraj government will be a sorry affair if people look up to it for regulation of every details of life. The classical statement of Thoreau that government is best which governs the least exemplifies this. Well, one more point, Gandhi wrote a small book, Constructive Program, in 1941, then revised in 1945. Gandhi was thinking about the reordering of Indian society. So he found that there are some issues in Indian society, and without addressing them, this Indian society cannot achieve the complete independence. Mahatma Gandhi wrote a small booklet, Constructive Program, its meaning and place, in 1941, which was thoroughly revised in 1945. This thesis was an outcome of a conversation he had with some co-workers in Sevagram. In this pamphlet, Gandhi identifies the following 18 socio-economic subjects to be addressed to achieve complete independence. 1. Communal unity. Because we are we have different religions, different ethnic groups, but communal or religious harmony, unity is must for any society. Second, removal of untouchability on the basis of caste, creed or color. Provision. Well, we know that nowadays new problem is coming, drug addicts problem. Khadi. It means we should be self-reliant in our economic affairs. Then village industries. And most important thing, next item is the sanitation. In India, in Africa, everywhere, we find that cleanliness is the main cause of a bigger challenge to any government to provide health services. Then basic education Gandhi provides, adult education. It means education for lifelong, because always society gets new and new problems and citizens should be educated in that problem to address that. Therefore, the adult education. Women. We all know in the world, women are the sufferers due to our social or our old system. Then education in health and hygiene. Then language problem of any society. You must rule the nation through the language of a common people. You can't run, for example in India, we can't run the society, we can't govern the society through English language. Because Gandhi wants that downtrodden people who are not educated, who are not able to speak in any language, must be given the chance to express their wishes in their own language, and that should be incorporated in the regulation system. Then economic equality, farmers, labor and students. These are 18 points Gandhi gave. Well, each and every society or nation has its own socio-cultural and socio-economic issues or problem which should be identified by concerned societies themselves in order to find their solution. They have such freedom as Gandhi says. Gandhi says that I have given 18 programs. It can be 20 or 24. Readers are free to add for any addition. Same thing for any society. When we want a new social order based upon the true civilization in which downtrodden people are not suffering, then we have to identify the socio-economic or socio-political problems in the society. Thus, Gandhi's concept of Swaraj projects a holistic view of society characterized by economic equality, guaranteeing the satisfaction of minimum basic material requirements, interaction among people based on ahimsa, universal love, and sovereignty of the people based on pure moral authority. Such a society is, in Gandhi's view, rule of God, Ram Rajya. It is Gandhi's contention that without the support of pure moral authority, a political order, even if it is constitutional and democratic, has to rely on violence in order to support its authority. Gandhiji, as you say, was himself an incarnation of voluntarism. Gandhi is this thought that if we have some problem, we cannot go to the government, we cannot go to some other agencies. We have to solve that problem ourselves. His whole political, social and moral philosophy was based on the individual performing his duty in the best manner possible individually and at the same time combining his efforts with other individuals towards solving the problems of the community, of the society and the nation. Throughout his life, he established voluntary organization and conducted the activities of this organization with the greatest possible interest in all details. And even after he achieved independence for the country, he intends to continue in the same fashion. So this small book, 40 2 pages book, constructive program, was very important, and he was so fascinated about this construction of Purna Swaraj. He had a very clear picture in his mind about what he wanted. He wanted to create a new India. He wanted to effect radical changes in the system and the existing social order through a social revolution. The word revolution in this context only means that the change had to come from its roots, from its foundations, not merely outward changes, but changes that were fundamental in nature. He wanted to do that and create a new society. This would be a society in which there will be equality, economic, social, and political, a society in which there will be no exploitation, a society in which people will manage their own affairs, a society in which the state performs a few functions as possible and in which people look after themselves as far as possible. It would be a self-regulated society. Gandhiji believed that the work of social reconstruction can be carried out by what he called constructive work organization, meant by people motivated by the spirit of service, idealism, and by the love of humanity. If we have a constructive social service organization with a view to achieve Gandhian results, then these constructive workers or social workers would also believe in the philosophy of non-violence. Well, if we don't believe in organization or government mechanism, if we believe in man and the dignity of man, then let us take a second look at Gandhiji, and during the 150th anniversary of Gandhi, let us undertake projects to understand this man better. If we want any salvation, that salvation has to come from below. Salvation will not come from the parliament. Salvation will not come from the legislatures. And I am absolutely convinced of that. This is Gandhi's view. Salvation will not come from even military or others. It will come from the people if they follow Gandhi. Thank you.